This is episode number 568 of the InnerFight podcast. Welcome back to another edition of the InnerFight podcast. Thanks a lot for tuning in. As always, a massive shout out to our show sponsors, Smith Street Paleo. You can check out exactly what's going on over there, www.smithstreetpaleo.com, or drop them an email, hello@smithstreetpaleo.com. Meal plans, sweet treats for all of you folks with a sweet tooth, and I know there's plenty of you out there. So go and check out exactly what's going on and how you can get involved. I'm super excited about today's show. This guy sent me a message out of the blue. Ben Blows is his name, and he just gave me a rundown of some of the different things that he's done. And as you guys will see from the title, a 25-kilogram tumble dryer on your back for 42.2k for the London Marathon is one of Ben's feats. He has a super interesting story, and I really, really hope you guys get a lot from it, of what's a seemingly normal guy, and he just absolutely is doing some incredible things and just shows that really anything is possible if you put your mind to it. Let's jump into today's show. Welcome back to another edition of the show, and as I was saying there, folks, I'm absolutely pumped about this one. Ben Blows from the UK, and as you were saying there before we started, Ben, Newmarket, the home of horse racing. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Marcus.
Mate, awesome. You sent me an email a few weeks ago, mate, and I was just blown away by all the different stuff that you've done. Before we jump into it, mate, give us a little bit of background. You're from Newmarket in the UK. Who are you? What do you do? What's going on?
Yeah, so my name's Ben. I'm 47 years old. I'm married to Louise, father to Joel, who's 9, and Spencer, who's 7, my 2 little boys. I work full-time in the fitness industry now. It's really only been this year since turn of the year. I've worked predominantly in construction my whole life,
right?
Mostly roofing. Yeah, so that's where we're at.
That's where we're at, mate. You in the information that you sent over to me, you said like you've been involved in sport most of your adult life, but it wasn't really a big part of your life as a child or a teenager. Talk to us a little bit about like life growing up, and because I want to get into some of the stuff you've done is amazing, and we often see like people get to the end of their teenage years and then there's a change in one direction or the other. What did you get up to as a kid and a teenager if you weren't playing sport?
Well, I don't suppose I was inactive because, you know, I was a 70s child, so we was out and we was out playing and everything else, and you'd go out from morning till night. But I was never got into any sport. I wasn't particularly good at any sport. I remember playing football at school, and I was pretty crap at that. And I can remember actually being last in a cross country race at school, so I wasn't very good. I wasn't very good at running, and I just didn't. Because I wasn't very good at it, I didn't enjoy it, so I just didn't do it, basically.
Yeah, I mean that's what we see happening a lot now. When people aren't very good, they just decide not to do it, don't they?
They do. That's right.
Yeah.
You know,
so
I'm very aware of this with my sons. You know, they even if they're not that great at sport, just to try and do it as much as they possibly can, even just to enjoy it. But
yeah,
which I never really had the luxury of, so I'm trying to be aware of that.
So when did things start to change for you, mate?
Well, I think when I was 18, I started boxing. Me and a friend started boxing, messing about in a field with a pair of gloves and sparring, and then took it a step further and went to a local boxing club, and then started training for competition as such. And then you need to knuckle down. Then you need to get fit, and it took me 18 months from when I went in till I actually climbed through the ring and boxed in a full competition, because my coach at the time, he was like, when you're ready and you're fit enough and you're strong enough, then you'll box. And I was desperate to box, but the problem was I wasn't fit enough and I didn't have the ability. Right. So it took me a long time till I could actually box.
What was it like, mate, the first time you got into the ring after like that is a long time, 18 months for lots of people are thinking, wow, that's, what was it like that first time?
It was petrifying, absolutely petrifying. I'm not going to lie to you. And I honestly think since that, I was 19, I think then, nothing I've ever done has scared me as much as that night.
Really?
And I remember doing my driving test not long after, and people were like, was you nervous? I was like, oh, mate, when you're boxed in front of 500 people and you're boxing someone you don't know or know anything about, you're not going to get nervous taking a driving test, and I think it's certainly helped me throughout the years, as in it's not going to be as bad as that night.
Yeah. Did you win the fight?
I did, yes, I did. That was one of the few ones I did win.
So did he? I mean, you obviously carried on boxing for a few years then.
I did, yeah. I had 14 bouts in total, and I ended up, I won 7 and I lost 7. But, I was 18, 19, 20 years old, and I wasn't committed to it, really. I was, I got away with it because I was young, basically. But,
yeah,
I wasn't committed to the fitness side.
So you're spending your days as a roof tiler, you said?
Yeah.
And getting more involved in sport. When did it really start to change?
Well, I suppose throughout my 20s, I'd stopped boxing and all I was doing was playing football. But, it was that sort of drinking culture where you play football for 90 minutes and then sit in a pub for 5 or 6 hours afterwards. So I sort of gradually declined through my 20s and put a bit of weight on and didn't really do anything in terms of, apart from playing football twice a week or, training session on a Saturday afternoon. And then in 2003, my boxing coach got in contact with me and said, I'd like you to box again, putting a show on for all the old boxers. I want you on the show. And I was like, really? Are you serious? I could not believe it. He'd asked me.
Yeah.
And he said, you need to weigh 85 kilos. And he's like, what do you weigh now? I was like, I have no idea. So I ran upstairs and jumped on the scales for the first time in about 10 years, and I was 106 kilos. So
wow.
I was like, yeah, I need to do something about this. So I got rid of the weight predominantly by running, which I hated at the time, and got into the running, and the weight came off because, when you're carrying sort of excess fat, which I was, it sort of dropped off as I started running. So it was, so I boxed again in 2003. I had a comeback fight and I won that. And then from there on, really, I just decided that I didn't want to go back to being 106 kilos, and I didn't want to have to lose 30 odd kilos in 4 months again. So I'm gonna stick at it. And from then I have. And
mate, that's when you sort of really started running a lot more, right?
That's right, yeah. But only, as most people do, short distances. And then you enter a 5K race, and then you do a 10K race, and then you think, I wonder if I could do a half marathon. I remember doing my first half marathon and sort of stumbling back to the car after thinking, there's no way on this earth could I run that distance again now. Physically, I couldn't. Mentally, I don't want to. But
yeah,
you know how it is. Within a year, I signed up for a marathon, and once I got into marathons, I really felt like I'd sort of found my true calling in life, and devoted about the next 10 years really to marathon running.
Wow. What was it about it that sort of made you love it, mate?
It's a very honest sport, isn't it? If you get out what you put in, and I was prepared to work hard to get the times that I wanted.
Yeah.
Probably the first time in my life I've been any good at anything. And I still, in terms of elite athletes, I'm not a good runner, but I was very determined, and I could, with the right amount of training, I could hit sub 3s fairly comfortably.
Yeah.
And and there's not many people in this area who could. Probably a handful of us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hey, sub 3 is no joke. I was actually looking at a stat this week with one of the other coaches here, and the average male marathon time is 4 hours 22 or something like that. So there's not many people around that could do a sub 3.
No, and I became obsessed with it. Absolutely obsessed. And I'd spend 4 or 5 months training, and at the end of the race, I'd have knocked off another 15 seconds.
Yeah.
For like 4 or 5 months training, but that's how it was.
How did that feel, mate, when you dedicate? Because I think that's quite a good learning point for anyone, no matter if people are running marathons or whatever they're doing in life. Like, people commit a lot of time to something, and at the end of the day, the gain might seem so marginal, but it sounds to you like it was like that's a massive result, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's what I wanted to do. It also kept me on the straight and narrow, because if I've got a race coming up, I nearly said a fight then. If I've got a race coming up in 4 months' time, that's right. I'm going to look at that. I'm going to structure all my training. I'm going to be disciplined and everything else. And that's everything focuses on that point. Yeah. What I also always had is I always had the next marathon entered before I'd before I'd run the race I was training for.
Really?
So when I finished, I'd have however long off to recover, and then right, let's go again. Let's crack on. So it would always be London Marathon in April, and then somewhere either October, November, December, somewhere. Usually in Europe, I'd go away for a weekend in Europe or something, maybe.
I bet the missus was loving that. But let's go on a holiday. Oh, by the way, I've got a marathon to do as well.
Yeah, it's just more of a. More often than not, I went on my own. I'd fly out on a Friday and have a look around on the Saturday, race on the Sunday, and then come home on the Monday. And
yeah,
it's nice, I can just, when you go away and you haven't got anybody with you and you haven't got to do anything anybody wants, a bit selfish, no, but you can just go and explore. And if you want to keep moving, you can. If you want to stop, you can. And
yeah,
so it's like a bit of a break for me, really.
Absolutely, mate. Talk us through, because I want to stay a little bit on your marathon time. Your best marathon was in 2014, where you ran 2:48. We're talking about sub 3 there. You're pretty well under sub 3, 12 minutes there, mate. Congratulations on that. But what about talk us through sort of your first marathon? You mentioned there your first half marathon and going home and thinking, how the hell am I going to do double that? What was the first one like?
The first one was pretty painful. It's still my slowest race that I the slowest marathon that I raced. Right. I've done a few marathons I haven't raced where I've just sort of pissed about and stuff with friends. Yeah. But it's still, so it was in Disneyland in Florida. And wow. It was 3:19, but I set out thinking my half marathon time was about 1:27 at the time, and I'm thinking double that. Yeah, I should be good for a 2:58. So I set out for about a 2:58 pace and came massively unstuck at about 20 miles, as you do, cramped up side of the road. Didn't think I could crack on, but managed to get going again, and finished it. Learned a lot, learned like a hell of a lot from that day, and couldn't walk really for about 3 or 4 days afterwards. And then from there on in, I didn't want to make that same mistake again. So,
what time did you finish with in that first one?
That was 3 hours 19.
Wow! So still a very respectable time there, Ben.
Yeah. But if it's not what you want, and people don't understand that, and you say this, and like my wife and stuff, she'll say, "Oh, you should be happy with that." And I'm not happy with that. No, that's the honest answer is I'm not, and I know some people would be, but I'm not, and that's what keeps me going.
True. Yeah, so that is a very strong mindset, that's for sure, right?
Yeah, and it's all relative, isn't it? It's all relative to the individual and everything else. If I ran 3:19 today, I'd probably be very happy with it because I don't really run anymore. But, at the time, it wasn't what I wanted, and I was pretty disappointed with it. But.
Mate, talk to us a little bit about your coaching, because as all this was going on, you obviously moved a little bit into coaching. So talk to us about that, because I think that's interesting, and we'll move sort of more on to what you're doing today with the fitness business.
Yeah. So when I had that box of the comeback fight in 2003, when I finished, my coach who had taken me in, and he was really ill at the time. He was terminally ill, and he said to me, he was a fantastic coach, one of the best coaches this country had ever produced, really, and he was on the England setup and everything else. And he said to me, one of the last things he ever said was, "I want you to stick a set of pads on and put a bit back into the sport. You've got a lot out. Stick a set of pads on. You never know where it could lead to." So, following his advice, I did, and I started coaching at the local boxing club here in Newmarket, and I went through the sort of coaching courses pretty quickly, and moved up the rankings of the coaching ladder quite quickly, because I had a good mentor down here where I was coaching at. And then after 6 years of coaching at the local club, Cambridge, which is a city about sort of 15 miles from here, and obviously is famous for their universities, Cambridge University Boxing Club were advertising for a new position of a head coach.
Yeah.
And I applied for it. I think I was only 37, 38 at the time. And I applied for it and really didn't expect to get it, because I thought, well, they're going to want someone with a lot more experience. I've only been an assistant coach and, everything else. Didn't think I'd get it, but went for a couple of interviews. And, I think on the third one, they offered me the position. So amazing. I then became head coach at Cambridge University Boxing Club.
Amazing.
Which was...
that must have been a wild experience.
It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And, I look back on that time now with, really, really, really fondly. There's me who's left school at sort of 14, 15 with no qualifications. And, here you are coaching the guys who are going to be potentially the next prime minister of the country, and it was crazy, but fun, some great times, and a really different format there because you're getting guys who are coming who aren't boxers, but they're very, very fit and very, very strong, because most of them have a running or a rugby or a rowing background, and you've got sort of 6 months to turn them into something that resembles a boxer to compete in the varsity match against Oxford.
Right.
So it was a different sort of structure to it, but it was crazy. It was amazing times, and met some great people, and still in contact with a lot of the guys I met there. It was really good. But I was head coach there for 5 or 6 years, and then I had to step down a bit because my wife became pregnant with our first child. And it was Monday night, Wednesday night, Friday night, Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings. Oof. And it wasn't a paid position. I was a volunteer.
Wow.
And it was sort of costing me money, and I'd get home from work at 4 and I'd have to be in the centre of Cambridge for 5 to set the gym up. And as much as I enjoyed it, it was absolutely full on for the sort of 4 or 5 years I was there. It was crazy, really, but it was awesome, and it's something I'm very really proud of that I did, and I still have a connection with the club. I still go to all the shows as an ex-coach. I get invited along.
Wow.
And still see, I'm still involved with the club. So yeah, it's brilliant times.
Well, that's incredible, mate. As you say, a little bit maybe out of nowhere, but I think what makes it even more incredible is that it's a position that, as you said, you put time and money into, and it wasn't a paid position. And we see a lot in sport these days, professionalism and people only doing things for money. And you've committed 6 years of your life just for love. Yeah,
well, I mean, so, in 6 years of my life before that as well at the previous club. So, it's as my coach said, you've got a lot out of this sport. He said, and I want you to now put some back into it. And, and that's how amateur sport works, isn't it? And that's how there's hundreds and thousands of unpaid coaches out there sort of changing people's lives every day.
Amazing, mate. Amazing. Yeah. 2013, mate, you came into the world of CrossFit, which is obviously interesting for us as much as everything else is. Talk us through that experience and how that impacted things, and maybe a little bit related to your running as well, because I'm interested to hear how you mix the two.
Yeah, I did. There was a new CrossFit gym opened up in Newmarket, CrossFit A14. And I thought, my preconceptions of it was someone said, he's pushing tyres around a car park and rope climbing. And I was like, well, it's got to be more to it than that. So I went along for like a tester session and was like instantly hooked. The first workout I'd done was Annie. I walked in and it was Annie, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, double unders and sit-ups. Of course, being an ex-boxer, I could skip. So I went in on the first day and my name was top of the leaderboard after the first day, and I was instantly hooked on it, and it was the first time I'd done any real sort of strength training alongside my running. So it was always about, when I was running, it was always about mileage. Can I get 70 miles a week? Can I get 80 miles a week? Can I get 90? A few weeks where I had 100-mile weeks. Then all of a sudden it came about, right, I'm going to go to CrossFit on Monday, and then I'm going to run on Tuesday because my legs are still aching from doing box jumps yesterday, so I'm not going to run today. And it became, and so when I then ran the 248, was a year or so after I started CrossFit, and it was the least amount of miles I'd ever run in training. I've got all my miles logged. I've got every mile I've ever run logged. It was the least amount of miles I'd ever run for a marathon, and it was the strongest I ever felt in a marathon. Wow. My previous best time was 250, and I think that was 10 years before. And for the last 10 years, it had just been getting slower and slower. 251, 253. And then the last couple of London marathons were 259, and I was doing more and more miles to just get under that 3-hour mark.
Yeah.
I had a few where I didn't get under, and I had a sort of few 301s and a 302s, and and then you start thinking to yourself, it's age. I'm 40 years old now. I'm 42, whatever it was. And then, of course, discovered CrossFit, less running, more strength work, and it just completely and utterly changed my running. The day I turned up at London and ran a 248, I was hoping to run I don't know, really, 255 maybe. I'd have been happy with 259, but I was feeling good. And then on the day, I just literally flew around the course and felt strong for 26 miles.
And you think that was, I mean, the only thing that really changed was your training, CrossFit?
My training, yeah. Less miles and more strength work. Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, it was that done it. There really couldn't have been anything else. I felt fresher going into it. You know, as runners, you always think more is better, don't you? But it's sadly not the case. But you can't tell people, and no one could have certainly told me, because I was so single-minded about it. It was like, no, I need to, I'd run twice a day. I'd sometimes run 3 times a day. I'd run in the morning before work, and then I'd run again in the evening. I'm not talking about a little run. I do 9 miles in the morning, 9 miles in the evening, and all of a sudden you're doing 18 miles on a Tuesday before your long run on a Wednesday evening, or a 15-miler, and like crazy amount of miles, really crazy. But at the time I do it, and I could get away with it. Relatively young, I suppose. I was still in my 30s then.
Yeah, but mate, still, I think it's a good lesson for a lot of people that just doing one thing or one sport might not always make you better at that particular sport, and sometimes having that open mind to going into something, and I'm sure, like you said, sort of the first few weeks of CrossFit, the body's in shock, but then when it gets used to it and you figure out what the balance is, you actually start to see some very, very decent results, right?
Yeah, you do. Exactly, you do. And, and I became, as I do most things, I became slightly obsessed with CrossFit, and that really took over, and, I'd compete as much as I possibly could any time there's a competition on, especially once I turned 40, when I was over 40 and I was in the Masters. It was, I was never really, I was never knocking at doors of regionals or anything like that, but, I won a few low-level competitions, local competitions and stuff, and I just used to really enjoy it, and it was the same again. It was one of them things where I was quite good. I was quite a good all-rounder. And of course, I always had a good engine. Yeah. And you need that good engine in CrossFit.
Let's talk about that engine, mate, because you've not only done shorter stuff and up to the marathon, but you also like to do longer stuff. Talk to us about some of the longer endurance challenges you've done. I know you've done running, and you've done a couple of other bits and pieces as well.
Yeah, I've had I've dipped my toes into the world of ultra running. I wouldn't necessarily call myself an ultra runner, because I've probably only done 7 or 8 ultra races, but I went up through the distances the same as I did when I first started running. I started with a 50k. I done the London Ultra, which was a 50k race, and I think I came 4th in that. Wow. And then I moved up, done a couple of 40-milers, and then I'd done a 100k, a London to Brighton race, which I really, really enjoyed that race. Wow. And felt like the 100k might be my new favourite distance. But I've only done it twice. It takes a lot out of you, doesn't it? When you do, I don't need to tell you that. Yeah. But when you do these runs, you can't sort of do one and say, right, I'm gonna do another one in a month or so. Especially if you're racing them. And I always was racing them. Right. It was never right. I'm gonna see, I'm going to get here. It doesn't matter how long it takes me to get. It was always, right, I've got a plan. I'm going to stick to it. The plan was always over ambitious. I want to run 10 hours for 100k. I didn't. I ran 11 hours. Yeah. I always find if you set your targets high, and even if you just miss them, then you're not a million miles away from where you want to be. Yeah. Yeah. And then I'd done a 100-mile. I'd done the South Downs 100. My target for that was I wanted to go sub 20 and top 10. And top 10 finish, and I ran 2012, and I finished 12th. So,
mate, heartbreaking.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how I felt when I crossed the line. I was literally devastated because I'd lost out on this time, and only because of my wife. Literally there and then at that moment, it was like, will you just shut up, snap out of it? You've just ran 100 miles. Yeah. What's wrong with you? Yeah. And of course, the next morning when you finally recover, or a little bit later when you recover, you look back on it, and I'm incredibly proud of my 100-mile time now, and I always will be. Yeah. But it does still niggle me that I didn't get under 20 hours. You
have to do another one.
I think there may be some unfinished business there, because that's what I wanted, but I didn't get it. But it was that running 100 miles in 20 hours was an incredible experience, and like I say, I was and I am, and I always will be very proud of that. It's a long way to run.
It is, mate, a long way to run. Folks that are still working in kilometres, that's 160 kilometres that Ben's done in 20 hours, and sadly the 12 minutes of obviously getting away from his target. Mate, I want to ask you a little bit of a question about what you were saying there, because you've been on the other side of it. You're talking to us right now from an athlete point of view, and setting that target and being a little bit disappointed, but I'm sure you've been on the other side of the fence with all the coaching that you've done. How do you get people people through those situations where someone might finish a fight in your case and maybe not perform as well as they wanted? Maybe the guy's got a goal to, I don't know if this is a goal that you knock the bloke out in the first round and he only gets him in the third. But how have you dealt with people that you've coached to get them through those sort of more challenging times?
Yeah, I mean, with boxing, it's slightly different, because with boxing, the time to analyse what went wrong or anything like that is not the time. Is not instantly after the fight. After the fight, whatever happens, you need to be very, very proud, and that you trained and competed and climbed through those ropes in front of all these people and box someone. Okay, it didn't go your way, but you need to stick your chest out and your chin up and be proud. And then obviously afterwards, when you get them back in the gym, we start to analyse what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how we can stop that happening again in the future. It's really, and it's I know when what I'm saying to people when I'm talking to them, and I'm saying to them, you should be proud and stuff. And I know that look in their eyes. I've seen it in the mirror too many times. They're looking at me, I don't care what you say because I'm disappointed. And that shows to me that they're passionate about it, and I'd rather see that they're disappointed. If someone loses and they don't give a shit about it, then I won't have a lot of time for them in the future or when they come back to the gym, because it obviously doesn't mean that much to them. If they are genuinely disappointed, that proves to me that they're passionate about it, and that they'll do what they need to do to get it right.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've had 3 marathons where I finished in 3 hours and 41 seconds, exactly same time. And it's like, and then of course you tell people when you say, what time did you get? And you say 3 hours, and before you said 41 seconds, they say, 3:41. No, not 3:41. 3 hours 41 seconds. And it's been, I've had 3 of these marathons at exactly the same time for some strange reason.
Wow.
I'm 42 seconds away from having another 3 sub-3, another 3 sub-3 marathons. Yeah. So I know how people are when they're disappointed and they don't get what they want, and it's I don't know. I suppose we deal with it how we have to.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and it's interesting what you said about boxing there. I don't think in any sport it's the right time to start analysing stuff after. Like, people should hold their heads proud, and most of the time they've done everything they can. And I always say with a lot of people, okay, no worries, I'll remember what you've said right now, and I want the same debrief in 24 hours. And then what I find actually is super useful is a week later, I want another debrief and another download, and let's see how these feelings are changing when you've got more, when you've had a bit more time to reflect on the situation. And it's quite interesting how it all kind of changes, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And you can there's always positives, isn't there? There's always positives to take out of any situation. Yeah. Well, not 99% of the time there is. So there's always something you can hopefully say that'll make them feel better, maybe.
Couple of other things that you've done that are quite interesting, mate, that I picked up on. Talk us through your rowing and ski erg before we get to the tumble dryer, because that's a cracker.
Yeah, rowing. I had a crack at the 24-hour rowing record last year. Failed miserably. I needed 260 kilometres and I got, I think, 219. Right. And I knew from about 14, 15 hours in, I wasn't going to get this record. So the plan was, right, we'll go to plan B. We'll just do a 24-hour row. Yeah. And it's that sucked. That last 10, 11 hours was pretty horrific. Really.
How did you do that, mate? Did you literally stay on the rowing machine for 24 hours?
Yeah, I set it to intervals on variable. So I set it for 57 minutes work and 3 minutes rest. So then I could get off the machine. I didn't have to worry about the monitor blanking out. And that would just count down, and that would be, my discipline. I'd have 3 minutes. I'd have a drink, use the toilet if I needed to, have some food, and then, then get back on. So I'm ready to start for the next one. But I knew pretty much straight away. I don't know if that makes sense, but I knew within a couple of hours that it wasn't going to happen. Right. And I think once you get into that mindset, it's very hard to get out of it. I knew straight away. All my training, my heart rate had been so low, and then all of a sudden, I'm rowing at the same pace. And there was a guy there interviewing me from the radio and stuff. So I'm talking to him, and, you don't want to row at a slow, sensible pace when you're talking to a guy and there's people around you. All of a sudden you're speeding up and trying to keep an eye on the monitor of my heart rate. And it was around sort of 140, and I'm thinking I haven't seen it over 110 in training. Now all of a sudden, 2 or 3 hours in, I'm at 140, and it was shit, really. If I'm honest with you, that's what it was.
Yeah,
it's
a long time to sit and pull the chain on a rowing machine, isn't it?
It's a long time, and I came off it and thought to myself, I'm going to do it again. But it took me quite a while to recover. I took all the skin off I didn't wear any gloves, and people had told me, if you're going to do it, wear gloves. And I was like, no, I don't need to wear gloves. I'll be all right.
Yeah.
And I didn't wear gloves, and then I took all the skin off my palms and managed to get some bandages around my sort of hands for the last couple of 3 hours, but it was way too late by then, and the damage had been done. So I sort of didn't go near the rowing machine again for, I don't know, a few months, and then sort of I tried to get back into it, and trying to do these 1 hour intervals and stuff, but I'd lost the spark for it, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
And then I broke my foot about 8 weeks ago. I was out running, completely missed the pothole, didn't see it. Half of my foot went in, half didn't, and it snapped my fifth metatarsal. First bone I've ever broken.
Wow.
47 years old, and I knew pretty much instantly that I'd done something pretty bad because the amount of pain I was in.
Yeah.
Managed to get my wife to pick me up. I was sort of lying on the side of the road because I couldn't put any weight on it. She came and picked me up, and I went to hospital and they x-rayed it. Yeah, you've broken your fifth metatarsal, no running, sort of 8 weeks. Great. So now what am I going to do? So I thought, right, I know what I do. I'll go back. This is the time. This is the opportunity to go back to the rowing.
Yeah.
Turn a negative into a positive. So I tried to row a machine, and it's just too much flexion in my ankle, and it was just causing me too much pain in my foot. Tried swimming, and that I could really only swim with my arms because I couldn't move my foot again. And I have a little gym where I coach 1-to-1 in the town here, and I have a ski erg in there, and I've never really used it apart from like intervals, same as most people do.
Yeah.
And I thought I'll give it a whirl, and realised I could keep the sort of lower half of my leg completely still and not be in too much pain. Wow. So I then started replicating miles for meters on the ski erg, and and I do a couple of 10Ks on it, and people would text me and say, "What's wrong with you? Are you crazy? Why would you want to do 10K on a ski erg?" But I actually got quite into it, and I wasn't doing it at the pace that you do it in a CrossFit workout.
Yeah,
it was
for sure.
Completely different. And I've done a couple of 10Ks, and I moved up through distances. Seems a bit of a repetitive story, that one. Moved up through distances, done a couple of marathons on it, and then thought to myself, right, I'm gonna do 100K. If I could do 100K, then I'm gonna have a crack at a 24-hour record. Wow. So I done a marathon on the Tuesday, done another marathon on the Thursday. First marathon was like 3:08, and I really enjoyed it. Then done another one 2 days later and done 3:28. Hated every second of it. I was obviously still fatigued.
Yeah, a little bit.
2 days before. And then on the Saturday I done 100K. I done that in 8 hours 20. So then on the following Friday I done 24 hours. So I only really trained for it for 3 weeks, I think.
Wow.
But I was training for some running events, so I had a good base level of fitness. And yeah, I've done the 24 hours. That was, I suppose, about 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and it just went really well. And I knew
how far did you go in 24 hours on the ski erg?
I got 246,000 meters.
Wow.
240.
Is that a record? Is that a 24-hour record?
It's a 24-hour record. The record was 240.
Wow.
So even with my limited maths, I could work that out as
you were over
10K an hour. So if I can do more than 10K every hour,
right?
And and that's what I did. I done exactly the same. I had 57 minutes on, 3 minutes rest every hour. I also done it in my little gym. The place I'd done it before was in a public place, and I was never really comfortable doing it there. Whereas this time I'd done it in my gym.
Yeah.
I put it out to my friends. If anyone wants to come and see me, I've got a few sick ultra running friends who just wanted to be there for the middle of the night job.
Yeah.
They wanted to come and see me suffer. So, but it just went really well. And my heart rate, it probably didn't go over 100 for the first 15 hours.
Right.
And it averaged out over the whole 25 hours because there was an extra hour added on. For the whole 25, it averaged out as a 102, which was is incredibly low.
Yeah, that is
to be work. I was dripping with sweat the whole time. I was in a puddle because I'm working, but I managed to just keep that heart rate low. And and somehow it went really, really well. And from the outset, I was very confident I was going to get it this time.
Tell us why you added an extra hour at the end of 24. You've already set the record by 6,000 meters, mate, and you added an extra hour.
That's my son Joel. That's his fault. He was looking at the records beforehand, and he said to me, bear in mind this is a 9-year-old boy. He said to me, Dad, I've been looking, and the longest continuous ski erg is 24 hours. He said, so if you do another hour, you'll get another world record, another age group record, a British record, and a British age group. So you get another 4 records.
Right.
And I couldn't really argue with that logic. And that last hour, I think I only pulled 5,000 meters. I literally just stood there, one hand on the ski erg and a bottle of Budweiser in the other hand. Had a beer, and I had to keep moving for 50 minutes of the hour for it to count.
Right.
So just as much as I wanted to go home and get some sleep, I just thought, I'll get it done. So it was the difference between getting 8 records or 4 records or 8 records really. So that's why I did the extra hour. And that will get beaten. That will get beaten, and I think it will get beaten soon because the ski erg is a relatively new piece of equipment. Yeah. The longest continual rowing record is 3 days and 23 hours. Oh. So there's a long way to go, but at this present time it was only at 24 hours, so I thought, what, sod it, I'm gonna do it. And like I say, that will get beaten. I'd imagine my ski erg record will get beaten pretty soon, but that's what records are for, aren't they? To be broken.
The other record that you hold, mate, is to complete the London Marathon carrying, of all things, a 25-kilo tumble dryer strapped to your back. Can you please explain to us where
it sounds really crazy when you say it.
Well, mate, I was reading through the notes and I read it and I'm like, should I be speaking to this guy in an asylum or is he allowed out in public? Like, where did this come from?
So it's a bit of a long story, but I'll keep it as brief as I can. I was on a TV program called Ultimate Hell Week, or Special Forces Ultimate Hell Week, and it was a lengthy selection process. 5,000 of us applied to go on there, and they whittled it down to 22, supposedly the country's fittest people. They flew us out to South Africa, and how it worked was every 48 hours a different Special Forces instructor from around the world would come in. He would do whatever he wanted to you, be as unpleasant as he possibly could. And then at the end of each cycle, someone would either leave or, people would leave. They'd say, I'm done, I've had enough. Or at the end of the cycle, the instructor would say, right, so-and-so and so-and-so are going. So it's like a last man standing sort of thing. So I applied for it 8 months previous to the filming. And from the moment I applied, I was, presuming I was in and training as if I was in. So I bought the army boots. I was running with a 25-kilo backpack. Wow. I had some friends of mine who were marathon training at the time, and they said, we're doing a 22 miler tomorrow. Do you want to join us? I was like, yeah, I'll come. So I was out with them the next morning in army boots. Wow. I had like the running shorts on, the running vest, and army boots, and it was just I got some strange looks that day. Yeah. So I trained hard for this TV program, and eventually, I went through the various casting interviews, and we had to go for a selection weekend down into North Wales, and eventually I got down to the last 22. So we flew out to South Africa. I was out there 10 days in total. I got through the first 3 instructors, and on the 4th instructor, and there was only 9 of us left at this point, I basically lost my temper and told him what he could do, and that was that. I was out. So that was it. It's over. It's like literally, wow, 8 months is just gone. And I was pretty much on the next plane home. So I'd flown home on a Friday. On the Sunday, I knew that they was filming the final in South Africa. So I'm sitting there thinking I should be out there, but I'm not. I lost my shit, and now I'm sat at home. And also on the Sunday, it happened to be the London Marathon, which I wasn't running for the first time in 11 years because I was meant to be in South Africa. Right. So I'm watching the marathon on telly, and like I said, I'd ran it the last 10 years, and I was pretty pissed off because I should be running and I should be in South Africa and everything else. And then they interviewed this guy, and he had a tumble dryer on his back, and they sort of said to him, "What on earth are you doing?" And he said, "I'm going for the Guinness record of the fastest marathon carrying a household appliance." And they said, "How much does it have to weigh?" And he said, "How much does it weigh?" He said, "It has to weigh 25 kilos throughout." And of course, as soon as he said 25 kilos, my ears pricked up, and I was like, I've had 25 kilos on my back for the last 8 months. I know exactly what that feels like. So I noted his race number down, and I tracked him on the app, and he had to get under 6 hours, and he didn't get under 6 hours. He was just a few minutes short. He was 6:06 or something.
Oh.
So he didn't get the record. So the record was still there to be broken. So literally from that moment on, I was out training with a tumble dryer on my back, 25 kilo tumble dryer on my back.
No way.
I say from that moment, I spent probably 6-7 months running with a weight vest. Got the weight vest up to sort of 30 kilos, and then at Christmas time, from Christmas to April, I actually physically put a tumble dryer on my back, strapped it to my back, and then ran the London Marathon with it.
Mate, I bet around Newmarket that definitely won't have got any funny looks at all, would it?
No. And there was one time I was out because I'd get a bit of abuse, same as I would if I was 18 years old and I was in a car and I saw some bloke with a big beard and a tumble dryer on his back, you'd pull up alongside him and say, "Mate,
what are you doing?"
So I'd go, and also, I didn't want to go up and down curbs too much because of the movement. Yeah. So I'd go really early so I could run in the middle of the road. So I'd go sort of 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was running. I'd left my house at 3 in the morning, and I was in a vest and shorts and a tumble dryer, and it was snowing, and I had the snow driving into my face, and the police pulled up alongside me, and they was just like, "Mate, what are you doing?" And I was just like, well, honestly, at this precise moment, I do not know. And it made me sort of just think, what am I actually doing out here with this on? But it was all good, and it was, I got the I'd done the marathon on the day, and I got the record, and I only just got it. It was close at one point, and I thought I'd lost it at one point, but how long
did it take?
5 hours 58.
Wow.
Well, I set out for 5:30 pace. I went through halfway in about 2:20, way too fast.
Wow.
And then suffered massively for it from about 16 to about 22 miles. I was mostly just walking, shuffling. I was in so much pain. This thing just felt so heavy, and I was trying to work out my splits, and I was like, I've lost this here. I'm not going to get the record. You messed it up. And somehow I managed to get it back, and managed to get moving again from about sort of 20 miles onwards, really. And then I could work out if I could hit 15-minute miles, which sounds awful, doesn't it? You can't run 15-minute miles, but I managed to get a record, and
unreal.
That was that. And things have been crazy ever since, really.
All I'm thinking is, how does one attach a 25 kilo tumble dryer to one's spine?
What one does is one fixes a race car harness.
No
so
way.
The tumble dryer, I took the back out and I fixed a steel back to it.
Yeah.
And then fixed a race car harness, loads of padding around the strapping, and then clipped it on. I mean, it was far from comfortable, but I had a few different ways of fixing it, and in the end, the way I had it was the sort of the comfortest it had been. But it was completely different to running with a 25 kilo pack because of the size of the thing. It would just move. If I slightly looked to my left, then my whole body was going.
Yeah.
My whole body was turning right, basically. So I had to be really, really still, and obviously I couldn't do my shoelaces up. And if my shoelaces come undone, I couldn't really bend over. And if I wanted to take it off, I'd have to find a suitable bench or a high bench or a wall or something to take it off.
Incredible.
Or I'd come home and say, bang on the window and get my wife to come and help me.
Can you take this thing off my back?
Yeah, exactly. So, but it was good, and I didn't really look at it as a running event. It was more of a strength event for me because I just wanted to see if I was strong enough to do it. And it really was. It wasn't really. Although I covered 26 miles, it wasn't what you'd call a 26-mile run. It was more of a grueling strength event.
Yeah,
and it was grueling. It's one of the toughest things I've done.
Incredible, mate. What, with that as sort of your last big thing that you've done, these last couple of things that we're talking about, is there anything in the pipeline, mate? Like, how do you ever sit home and think, I need to top that, or I should do something a bit different, or can I sit for 2 days on a rowing machine? What's on your radar now?
I don't know why, but I'm just always constantly looking now. What can I do? And I've sort of got my heart set, and you might know a little bit about this, about running 31 marathons in 31 days. And when I broke my foot 8 weeks ago, that's what I was training for.
Right.
And then obviously I broke my foot, and I was going to do it in December of this year, and I the biggest hurdle is obviously getting my wife's permission. And she said to me, "Do you have any spare time now?" And I was like, "No." She said, "Are you always tired?" And I was like, "Yes." "Do you think you can do it?" "Yeah." "Well, if you want to do it, we'll do it," sort of thing. So she sort of pointed out how hard it will be. And I really fancied having a good crack at it, but with this broken foot, and it's not right still.
Yeah,
I've been doing a little bit of running again on it lately, but it's still not right, and I think it needs a proper rest, maybe like a few months as opposed to. So I don't know. I think maybe I'll just take it easy from now till Christmas and just tick over, and then see where we are at Christmas. I'd like to get back into running again and maybe try and have another crack at another sub-3 marathon. So
wow.
I don't know really.
Right.
In 10 minutes time, I'll probably think, well, if you're not running, why don't you go and use the rowing machine? And it's hard because if I'm running, then I want to be as light as I can, and if I'm rowing or on a skier, I want to be as heavy as I can, and mass moves mass and everything else.
Yeah.
So it's it's conflicting all the time. My wife says this to me all the time. She goes, "No, what are you actually training for? Are you training for CrossFit? Are you training for running? Are you training for rowing, for skiing? You need to make your mind up."
Yeah.
And it's just constant. I'm just constantly changing really. So.
But you do, but you don't. I mean, you've done incredible things, mate, and like to hop on the ski erg and hit those records that you hit, as you said there, with only really 3 weeks of training is phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah. It's and a lot of that comes down to mindset, I suppose.
Yeah.
And the fact that I've done a few 24-hour sort of endurance events before, so it's coming. It's once you start, it's in the post. It's going to hit you at some point.
Yeah.
And it's about getting through that.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I've taken quite a lot of your time, and you shared a lot of really interesting stuff with the listeners. So, Ben, I really appreciate you. But, mate, before we sign off, I want to ask you a question that I ask for a lot of the listeners, and I'm sure you've got something good for us here. I always ask if you've obviously learnt along the way a hell of a lot, mate, but if there's one bit of advice you could give to the listeners, give to people that sort of wraps up what you've learnt in life so far, what would that one piece of advice be?
I think, I've thought about this question because obviously, I listen to your podcast and stuff. And, for me personally, everything sort of changed when I got into health and fitness, my whole life, including meeting my wife and my 2 beautiful sons I have now. And, and I look back, and if I hadn't got into the boxing when I did, I don't really know what would have happened to me. I don't think I'd be sitting here as content and happy with life. And these records I have, they're not life and death stuff. It's a bit of fun really, but for my actual enjoyment of life and how happy I am, my advice would be to anyone is just get out there and get into it. Because I say this to my kids, I have nothing special. I'm a slightly overweight ex-roofer from Newmarket. That's with a bit of a strong mindset, and that's really, if I can do it, then who knows what anybody can achieve. So unless you try, you're never going to know. So just get out there and try it out, and who knows what you can do.
Amazing. Ben, thank you so much for your time, mate. There's so much.
No problem. It's a pleasure to catch you, Mark.
Yeah, no, mate, absolute legend. And folks, definitely go and check out those records of Ben. I guess the Concept 2 ones are probably over on the Concept 2 website, aren't they?
Yeah, they've updated their sites. I got my certificate through the post a couple of days ago, so that's all updated for now until somebody else goes and smashes it.
We'll see. Maybe
I'll have to have another go.
Yeah, then you'll have another crack at it. I think it'll keep on going. Mate, what we'll have to do is we'll have to catch up with you in a year or so, because I don't actually believe that you're going to do nothing. I believe that you'll probably let your foot heal, because that's the smart thing to do. But I would imagine there's quite a lot to come in the next 12 months. So we'll have to stay in contact, mate, and get you back on in a year. That's awesome. Great
Brilliant
stuff. Ben, thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Bye.